Tony D and Little Joan with the Screenwriter's Rant on Where the Crawdads Sing, a movie based on a book that takes place in the South and has a lot of Southern tropes in it, and had a little preview of a trailer, which I still don't get the trailer preview in front of the trailer. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Please check out my books. Links in the description. Comedy Horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 8. Thanks for buying them. Somebody bought like 5 books the other day. It was awesome. All right. So this has every Southern trope you could possibly think of. So the premise is, and this is based on a novel, there's this marsh girl. Her mother died, and this takes place, I think, in the 50s. Her mother died, and she was left alone in the marsh to survive, and did, and thrived, and lived in their house all alone, but managed to survive, and ate the crawdads, I guess, because her mother taught her well, and she sold mussels, and I don't know, I guess she went to school, but then got ashamed, and then was kicked out, and she sold mussels to this couple, who helped her survive, I guess. This is based on a global best-selling novel. I've never heard of this novel, but that doesn't mean anything. It's a very girl-centric novel, I'll say that, because the main character, she is a strong, independent woman who, is beautiful and survived on her own, and she falls in love with a handsome man here, and but then another rich kid, I don't know, tried to get in her pants, and she maybe killed him, or he had an accident. I'm not sure which. But she ends up on trial for murder, and this is the 50s, so it's a little different. There's more social stigmas and whatnot, more tradition, and she's unusual. See, that's a woman going, see how unusual she is? So this is the movie that I guess lefties still want to believe they live in this world, I think, to a large extent. That they live in a world where, you gotta break with tradition, and this woman lived with nature and broke with tradition, and she didn't need no man, even though she sort of does, because she ends up falling in love. But I mean, it's a book featuring music by Taylor Swift in theaters in July. I think it had the credits. Based upon the novel by Delia Owens, screenplay by Lucy Alibar, and directed by Olivia Newman. So it's women. There's women all over this one. Is it any good? I mean, because it's based on a book, I mean, you definitely got all the old tropes here. You got southern men, southern white men, and I'm sure they're incredibly racist. But you got the Piggly Wiggly here, and the old-time movie theater and drugstore. I mean, it's a simpler time, but she's going to change the world. It feels it's not overtly woke, I'll say, but it feels very manipulative to me, because it's got all those elements women like, and so it's all about her love, but she's strong and independent. She doesn't need love, but she wants love. It's like every push button thing for female audience, which is, I'm sure, why it was a global bestseller phenomenon, whatever they're calling it. I don't know. I've never heard of this book. Where the Crawdads Sing. Is it good? I don't know. I mean, because it's a book, it probably has a lot more detail, which will make it, in general, a better movie. It doesn't appeal to me, being a guy, because I just look at it and go, okay. Good for her, I guess. Everybody gets so... They always make these movies where everybody gets bent around the axle over the protagonist. You're living your life wrong. Like, that doesn't happen, if it ever happened. I mean, you could argue that back in the 50s, there were people who were like that, who were like, oh, that's unusual. Your hair's very long. But, I mean, I didn't live in that era, but I lived at a time when there were still some parameters, and sometimes people would check you. You know, they would say things like, like you couldn't go into certain restaurants unless you wore a tie. Did they make a huge deal about it? Did they, tear down society over it? No. They just said, look, you're going to have to wear a tie. And sometimes they'd even loan you a tie if you had or you had to wear a jacket, and they'd have a loaner jacket for you, like, well, you forgot or you didn't know, so here's a jacket, you could just wear it for the meal and keep our look up. Little things like that. So, I mean, I'm sure the Marsh girl thing could have been a thing. It could be a girl whose mother disappeared in the marsh and she survived on her own, and that's plausible. Although I think she looks a little young when it happens, but it's plausible. People survive. And, and that's a cute story, whatever. She can fish, she can do all these things, because she don't need no man. But at the same time, women like movies about relationships, so of course it's a love story. But, I don't know. For me, there's not a lot here. There's not a lot of action. There's not a lot of vampires or zombies or monsters or robots, so it's not my kind of movie, so I'll probably be more harsh on it. I'm not seeing a tremendous amount of drama here. Yeah, the murder is something, but there's no way she's going to prison for this, right? It's almost like she's too cute and too nice to have done this. Although maybe she did. Maybe she killed him, but if she killed him, she had every reason because the guy was going to rape her, right? And then here's a scene where the two protagonists, not the protagonist, but her love interest and the rival love interest get into a fight. I don't know who this guy is. That's another character. This guy who rents the boats, I guess. And it's all about nature. But, even though she's living out in the woods by herself, in a house, but kind of in the woods, when you kind of live an isolated life, and I have some experience in that, you kind of let things go after a while because you're by yourself all the time. So this strikes me as the Hollywood version of that, right? She's still really gorgeous, still really clean looking, but she's isolated. So they muss up her hair a little bit. That's not how she would look if she had been living in the woods for years by herself. She would be filthy. Most likely she'd be pretty filthy. Her hair would probably be short, or definitely shorter. It probably would be a mess. She'd probably, she'd definitely be wearing clothes that were a bit more ragged, more practical for running around in the marsh, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me seeing the trailer, the moments in the trailer. I mean, look at her here. She looks, she looks very well groomed for someone who's been living in the marsh her whole life. So I'm just seeing a lot of tropes here that look, and maybe it's not. Maybe I'm seeing them. Maybe they're setups for them. But maybe the movie makers and the author, got away from that. It's a setup for that, but in the end, it's not really the story, right? Maybe it works against that. I would like to see a movie like that, where you have all these Southern tropes, but they're all not true. How about a Southern story that takes place in the 50s where there are white people who aren't racist and they like their African American neighbors, because those people existed. In fact, they were the majority. They coexisted and they were fine. Something like that. Maybe this story bucks that trend. I doubt it. I mean, I think that's why it got greenlit. It's a female protagonist. We've got a female soundtrack. We've got a female director, a female screenwriter. So it's smelling woke to me. Although I'm not seeing anything overtly woke here. I'm very suspicious though. Would I see this movie? Absolutely not. It's not for me. It's just not for me. Do I think you should see it? I guess if you like this kind of stuff, ladies. I'm sure it'll be a fine romance or whatever, and it'll push the right buttons, and you'll be carried along and say, "Oh, I wish I was her." So, but I don't think it'll be awful. I'll say that. I say, yeah, even if it's woke, it probably won't be awful. I mean, it doesn't look awful, but I've been deceived before. And that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. I don't know when this movie comes out. Oh, July. So look for this in July if you want to see it. We're going to make some more videos, and we'll see you in the next one.